We didn't have any friends. We didn't have any family. We only had each other. And we believe that deep and meaningful relationships are kind of the key to a happy life.
In this episode, we'll learn how to develop high-impact partnerships and pioneer true human connections. Helping us with this are the founders of Something More Human. Welcome to the show, Sam and Elliot. How are you doing?
Good.
How's it going?
For having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Toby.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode for Soulful Conversation about human connections, developing true human connections. I've been looking forward to speaking with you because, like you said before we started recording, the episode that came out some weeks before, or I think last week, was about, phone relationship and how it affects our human relationships. And I've been curious and eager to learn more about how to deepen my relationship with other people. And that's why I'm looking forward to speaking with you. But before we go into all the questions that I've loaded in my head right now, I'd just like to first start out with you, like we always do. I'd like to learn about your stories and what inspired you to start Something More Human. Would you like to share this with us?
Question, yeah.
Do you want to take it?
I'll let you take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're married and we've always had kind of this deep desire to weave our lives together and collaborate. And it took a few years to figure out what that might be. And the inspiration for starting Something More Human was we moved. We moved to a city where we knew no one. We didn't have any friends. We didn't have any family. We only had each other. And we believe that deep and meaningful relationships are kind of the key to a happy life. So we made it our goal to find community, to find friends, and to really be a part of the community here in Denver, which is where we moved. And we quickly found out that a lot of us feel like post-pandemic, our social skills have atrophied, and it's a little bit more difficult to get out there and meet people and become friends and be vulnerable. But we want to. It's just that barrier to entry is really high. So we decided to create something more human, really asking and answering questions all about human connection. How do we meet friends as adults? How do we cultivate deep and meaningful relationships, even when we're not in the same city? How do we do that when we are in the same city? What does that look like when we are seeking romantic relationships, friendships, business partnerships? So that's really kind of how we got here.
Yeah, that's so deep. And those are all the questions I have prepared already for you. Because, I mean, like you said, thanks so much for sharing that, by the way. And I can totally relate with that because I also just moved. I changed cities like 5 months ago. And it's like starting all over again. I mean, you have the friends in the other city about 500 or 600 kilometers away, but it's not like, having them close by like before. And that's why I would like to know, like from your story, how were you able to make friends as adults?
This is a really good question, actually, that we've been talking about the last 24 hours, because the prevailing advice that you get, like if you search it on the internet, is like, what does Toby like to do? If Toby likes to golf, well then in this new city, go to the golf course and that's how you make friends. It's usually like, the advice is whatever your hobbies are, go do those hobbies in hopes that you'll find people there and make friends. And while that is sometimes possible, I think that the barrier to entry is still there, right? It's not as easy just to show up to the golf course and strike conversation with somebody new. You know what I mean? So it's kind of why we started this event series that we're talking about, because we feel like people. I don't know. Can you take over that part? The way what people need for these events, for these curated spaces.
Yeah, sort of like intentionally designed spaces.
Right.
So when there's an intention for a gathering, it really sets it above and beyond, as opposed to like, oh, we're in line at the grocery store at the same time. Certainly that's possible, and that serendipity exists out in the world.
Right.
But when we find and create intentional spaces for connection, that's really when we can start developing meaningful relationships.
Right. We were talking to a members only club, and we feel like that's something that I would even recommend for you, Toby, finding club who, they're all about curating these events that are happening every single day. So instead of trying to go out to your local bar or coffee shop or something and find someone, going to this members only club that sure you are paying for, but what you're paying for is access to an intentional community where they are curating those events for you so that you're not having to go and hope to meet somebody randomly. That is sort of the idea, and the goal is to, to get there and to meet these people a little more organically and start communities that way. And so that's kind of where we're at now is, we're not really hoping to find people at a cafe or at a park. We're going to these events to meet people intentionally. And that's sort of the difference for us.
Other examples of that are, I think, like book clubs where there's intentional questions and conversation, hosting your own dinner party even. Other things that come to mind are networking events. I know sometimes that can feel awkward or superficial, but we've made some really meaningful connections here that have just blossomed into friendships, although we met kind of with this business-minded approach.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's so deep. I like that answer because sometimes you might want to approach someone in the grocery store, for example, and be like, I don't want to come off as a weirdo, and I don't even know who this person is. This
Right.
person is, like-minded, like I would love to speak with. But one question that came to my mind when you talked about all of these networking events and all of that is, for a shy person like myself, how do I break the ice?
I have a couple of suggestions. One is have a dinner party question in your back pocket at all times. So a question that you've already thought of, that you already know might spark an interesting conversation, that already is in alignment with your authentic personality. So for me, I've started asking people a two-part question. One is, of the 7 deadly sins, which are you and why? And then to end on a happy note, of the 7 virtues, which are you and why? And it just is a really fun way to get to know somebody on a deeper level without the pressure of like, tell me about yourself. Who are you? So having kind of a pre-prepared question, I think, is an excellent tool. And also, honestly, practice. Even if it is that person in the grocery line, doing the practice of introducing yourself. And if someone doesn't want to talk, that's totally cool and totally fine and has nothing to do with you as a person.
Right.
Yeah, I love the fact that you talked about that because sometimes you want to take it on yourself and say, oh, am I looking bad, or is it my fault? Is it because of the way I look or the way I approached, but sometimes it's not about you. It's just about, the situation at the moment. It's the grocery store. No one wants to be spoken to. Maybe.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. Well, on my journey of, personal development and all of that, I always have this approach of working on myself first before going out to approach people. Like when I moved to this new city, I was like, maybe this is my time to reflect back on the relationships I had in the past, friendships I had in the past, and see what went well, what not go well. Things that not go well, maybe work on them first before putting myself out there again. So I would like to know, like, when I was reflecting on that, I would like to know how I could, deepen the relationship I have with myself, like how to become much more connected with myself. Because I think in the past relationships and friendships, I've maybe lost myself a little bit, because of trying to please people and trying to fit in and try to, do things. How do I find myself again and connect back with myself?
These are all pretty poignant questions and things that we're talking about really recently with each other and on the show. But maybe you can tell them a little bit about Dan Harris. I feel like that's a pretty good.
I think first, like, that's a really profound realization for you to have. And not a lot of people think that deep relationships start with your relationship with yourself, but that's really true. So in order to have other people know you, you have to know yourself. We recently had Dan Harris on the show. The episode's not quite out yet, but he is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 10% Happier. People ask him a lot about meditation. That's really what he talks about and what his book is about. He has a podcast called 10% Happier. But we wanted to ask him more about how that has changed the way that he relates to other people. And he sort of shared that he became so focused on his relationship with himself that he forgot about his relationships with other people. So I think there's kind of a delicate balance, but you're striking, I think, a really key chord, which is internal reflection and internal knowing creates space for other people to know you. So we have a community called the Something More Society, and we do challenges every single episode. So the last episode, I challenge everyone to write down a list of you. That could be, what is the identity of your brand? That could be, what are your favorite things? That could be, what is something new that you're seeking out in the world? And getting clear on that for yourself allows you to lead with authenticity. And then you're naturally attracting the people who like that authentic version of yourself.
I think the thing that's sticking out to me right now is he talks a little bit about how we're so uncomfortable with uncomfortability, how we're so uncomfortable in all these moments where we're not being distracted by our phones. We're uncomfortable with boredness. So instead of being mindful of ourselves and giving ourselves that time and space to sort of reflect, we're constantly going to our screens to distract ourselves. And that was just something that has really rang true with me. And I know that you've talked about that with your guests, but I feel like that's honestly a very simple practice, truly, is like get comfortable in the uncomfortable. And those uncomfortable moments are like the moments in between, the moments where we're waiting for, waiting at the stoplight or waiting for the elevator. I think we just right away go to our phones. And to me, that is why there seems to be this, like, as he was saying, he was calling it a friendship crisis too, is right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think simple practices like that too, like, being committed to staying off your phone in those specific moments, I think that is about knowing yourself as well. That's about being mindful. And I think that creates a mindfulness awareness of who you are. And that goes a long way too,
Yeah, that's very true. Like you talk about phone. I also listened to this episode of mine, I think over the weekend, and I practiced it actually. I was like, I switched off my phone totally and I just left it off. And I was like, the first few minutes was a bit difficult for me. And then I just like, I have to pull through for the next 1 hour. And I found out that I was able to connect with myself. I mean, deal with all the thoughts that I didn't want to deal with and do things like I did not want to do, willingly. And that's why, when I was preparing for this conversation and I was like, yeah, I'm going to talk about this again with you. I was thinking about practices or skills or things I could learn and do in order to improve this. Then I found out that you also have this kind of event, that encourages people to keep their phones away and come. And I was like, oh, I'm going to ask Sam and Elliot to tell me about this. How does that work? What do you do there?
Well, hopefully you can find an event like that for you if you're trying to meet new people in this new city. That's exactly why we created it. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, kind of reflecting like we did create it for other people just like you who are looking to meet new people, but find that barrier to entry really high. But I realized we created it for ourselves too, because we were new and we wanted that to find that physical space where we could, find a community. And I'll let you take over and tell them a little bit about what our Return to Real Life series is all about.
Yeah. So this is an often asked question about like, how do we get all of these people to be off of their phones? And we actually just do it with positive social pressure. So we just put at the very front of the messaging, the way that we market the event, the way that we talk about it, the way that we communicate what to expect, that it is phone free. And we don't take people's phones when they arrive, but we just say, we recognize there are some people that do need their phones. Doctors, maybe you have kids at home that you want to be available if the babysitter calls. That's totally fine. And if you need to get on your phone, to exit the space and rejoin us when you can put it away again. And that's actually been really successful. We haven't had people kind of test the limits or the boundaries, because I think Elliot has said this, that people really want that opportunity and that excuse to be off their phones, but it can feel awkward. So when we're doing it all together at the same time, at least we're all feeling the same feelings together in the room. And then we also curate some conversation activities and tools to really have those meaningful connections. And I think having both of those at the same time really allow people to just be present in the moment. It's a 3-hour event. Our goal is to really go to as many cities as possible. And so far it's been really, really successful. And we've seen some really exciting connections. I don't want to talk too much about like what actually happens, because it's a little bit different in every city and it's a little vague by design.
I was about to ask you that. Do you play games? I wanted to know the details because I'm quite curious. Like, how do you keep people off their phone? Like, it must be something that, for me, it must be something that I'll be so much engaged in that I don't know 3 hours has passed and I've never touched my phone at all. That'll be like something amazing to do and experience.
Right.
Yeah, it is nice. It's powerful to have, dozens of people in a room with, no phones for 3 hours. You're saying, it does go by really fast. But I also think what it is, it's very empowering, because I think, like Sam is saying, we've said many times, like, people are looking for that excuse to get off their phone. And so we're sort of providing that excuse. But once you realize that you can, in a potentially uncomfortable situation with a bunch of people you don't know, once you realize that you can stay off your phone for 3 hours and not, feel this urge to constantly check it, to use it as a crutch when you're feeling uncomfortable, I just think there's so much power there, and we felt that power in the events. And so we definitely think that we're onto something good. And like Sam said, we want to keep doing it everywhere and anywhere we can, maybe even in Germany someday. So,
Yeah, that'll be amazing. I'm going to place the link to your website in the show notes of this episode. So I encourage everyone who's already curious about this, who wants to find out more about this, just click on the link, copy the link. I'm also going to be looking, I'll be on the lookout. Maybe when you come to Germany, I'll be able to take part in that also. That'll be amazing. Yeah. So, now let's assume now that we've talked about this already. I'm able to connect with myself. I'm able to have that, connect with my roots, my true self, and I'm able to connect with people, approach people and talk to them. Or, sometimes at a point, the small talk level will become too boring and we'll have to go deeper. We have to leave this superficial level and go deeper. How do we do that? How do you know when it's time to take it a step further or go deeper into your conversation or relationship with people?
Mm-hmm. I think
tough question.
the key is honestly leading by example, because somebody has to do it first.
Yeah.
One of you has to do it first. So if you can practice building the muscle of vulnerability, that's also kind of where these questions in your back pocket come in. It creates a culture in your relationship that you're a safe space, that you can talk about your failures. You can talk about something bad that happened. You can talk about your successes and celebrate each other and create conversations and a rhythm for how you connect. And it's scary, and it's okay that it's scary. And we're humans that fail and stumble all the time. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, and we don't have to hold ourselves to this crazy standard. But if we just lead authentically, it might turn some people off, but that's great because those people maybe aren't meant to be really close to you. So the people that are will resonate with it and will open back up in return.
Yeah, I think that is what we've done. I think that's kind of how the podcast started. And we've been very candid. We've been married for 6 years. We've been together for 8 years. We got married in a year. We got engaged in 5 months. So like everything happened very fast. And we were very open with our friends, and even on the podcast, like first year of marriage wasn't great. But I think the reason that we started the podcast was because we realized like that we do lead by example, and that we are willing to have these really deep conversations all the time with anybody because we're just those people. And I think that was sort of the impetus for starting Something More Human, was we realized that people came to us and looked to us for, understanding or for perspective or just for that candidness that we showed. And I think that's like, I was having trouble coming up with an answer to your question, but I think that's a great answer. It's like we lead by example, and then naturally we'll just attract those people in our lives. And like Sam said, sometimes, you're going to meet people that don't want to go that deep with you, and you'll find out pretty quickly, and it might be awkward, but I think you quickly realize like, this person's just not meant to be in my life in that particular capacity, and that's okay. But I think you'll find those people pretty easily if you're willing to do it first yourself. And it has to start with somebody, so it might as well start with you.
Yeah, it might just start with you. That's true. That's Something More Human. I mean, I'm so glad that you've been together for the past 8 years. You've been married for 8 years now. I would like to give you your flowers and just learn also from your example. How have you been able to do that? How has the journey been like, being together for 8 years, working on your relationship and all of that?
That's a good question. We're so different, like really different in most ways. And I think early on, that was really hard because we were butting heads all the time. We're both very spicy, very outspoken. But we've always had this desire to collaborate, right? And so when we created Something More Human, it gave us a new opportunity to learn that our differences are actually incredibly complementary. And so if we can lead into those complements, we can really learn how to celebrate the ways that we are individually strong, get out of each other's way, and collaborate more efficiently.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think those are great answers, explanations. There's also like very practical things. Like we went to therapy for a long time. And, I think that in a lot of ways probably saved our marriage, because sometimes you need that mediator. Sometimes you need that person in the middle to call you out in front of the other person and tell you that you're wrong. And that's really hard. That's really hard to do. That's really hard to accept, but it's necessary. So I think all those things that Sam said are true and are great and are rich and are powerful. But I think also very practical things that people seem to be very against, which is therapy. And I think that people just don't want to be told that they're wrong, and it's understandable. I totally get it. I think that's who we are. It's our human nature. But yeah, I would say a big one is therapy.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think
truly.
you're also touching on another tangible point, which is it took us some time to learn that fighting to be right, we're all going to lose. So when we fight, we need to fight for resolution and being really upfront about intention. Hey, we're having this hard conversation because I love you and I really value our relationship. Let's be better. Not you're wrong and I'm right and here's why. That's just a losing kind of situation.
Yeah, small things too, like small words that are really powerful when you're in those situations. Like, and I've thought it so many times, we're on the same team. So like if we're on the same team, like what are we doing here? Why are we having this fight? Like who cares about who's right? You know, it's about coming to a resolution and moving on. And I think small things like that, for me, the perspective has really helped shift my thinking and my negative energy maybe at the time is like, you know, at the end of the day, this is my wife, this is my partner, and this is my confidant, you know?
Yeah.
So we're on the same team. Let's figure it out and move on.
Yeah, I really love that. You know, but whenever you're fighting to win, to prove yourself, that you end up losing, both parties end up losing, and that's
Yep.
bad. And talking about losing, for people out there, for listeners out there who, for example, have dealt with a lot of disappointment or failures when it comes to relationships or friendships, what would you advise them to do at this moment, like to bounce back or to work on? I don't know. What's your advice?
I think something that's come up for us a lot recently in conversations on our show is framing friendships through the lens of what would you do in a romantic relationship. So, for example, I have pretty high standards for my romantic partner. Therefore, if a friend is not reciprocating my excitement to see them or reaching out to me to show me that they care or inviting me out, I wouldn't tolerate that from a romantic partner. So how do I either communicate my needs or move on and find someone that's as excited as I am about this relationship in all things, in romance and intimacy, in friendship, in business partnerships? There's a lot of fish in the sea, as they say, and that's definitely the case for friendship. So it's okay that things hurt sometimes. You know, we are people, we do fail each other, and we're not all meant to be in each other's lives forever.
Right. To answer your question maybe a little bit differently, maybe I interpret it a little bit differently. We have an episode called "Failure is a Rite of Passage," and I feel like failure like is definitely associated with shame. I think that we're afraid to feel shame, and that's what failure brings. But I think failure is the prerequisite for success. You can't success without failing. So I think that we should, there should be a revolution of failing. Like failing is a great thing. I think that first of all, I think that sometimes you learn way more in your failure than you do in your successes. You know what I mean? So I think that we're too attached to the emotion of failing and what it might bring. But I think that there's so much opportunity if you can see it that way in your failures in relationships or in business. Like if you can see it every single time you fail, it's an opportunity to learn and take that knowledge with you and apply it to the next time that you try. I mean, there's no way that you can't win eventually, So I know we answered that pretty differently, but yeah, I think that as soon as you can accept that failure is just a part of life, I know that, easier said than done. It's easier to move on and it's easier to fail. And I feel like that's kind of where we're getting now, with the podcast and with business, is not really throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. But one time, a long time ago, Sam said, like in one of the first episodes, and I think that you got this from a conference you went to. And she said, if I told you that the 21st episode was going to be the episode that like sort of changed things, how fast would you fail through the first 20 to get to 21? And I was like, that's a beautiful way to look at it. It's like you have to just do it and you'll fail and you'll learn and you'll get to your success quicker. And I think that's such a beautiful way to look at it. And I feel like that's kind of the thing that we've embodied pretty well as of late.
I'll just add one more thing. When it comes to personal relationships, we have an episode called Ask Your Friends for Help. And so when you're feeling deflated or like you failed or like you've been hurt, a new door opens to lean on other people who are close to you and simply ask for help. It's not easy to do, but we cannot show up for the people that we love if we don't know that they need help. And so being kind of honest and vulnerable about where you need support, I think is also a skill and a muscle that we build over time. And something about our culture of humility prevents us for asking for help. But we all need help sometimes.
That's very true. Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot from you already from this conversation. I've learned about leading by example. So, I mean, before I even go into everything I've learned, I would just like to tell everyone out there once again, the link to website is in show notes of this episode. For those who are already wondering about the podcast, if you get on the website, you see like on the top bar, there's a bar that's always moving like Spotify and yes, Apple Podcasts. You can just click on the one that you like there, subscribe to the podcast already, and just start listening already. But before you do that, let me talk about what I learned already. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically I've learned about leading by example, and if something does not work out for me, if I open up to someone, maybe that's not the right person for me, or I'm not supposed to go deeper than the level I am with the person, and that's about failure for me, and just letting go, learning from that failure, and moving on to the next one. Maybe the 10th one, the 21st person I meet is going to be the success story for me. So I have to just run through this first 20 people and they get to my person, basically.
Sure.
Yeah. And I've learned also, I mean, just connecting with yourself and balancing, like you talked about with your guests, saying me meditating and knowing myself better, learning from my reflecting and knowing myself better, and also connecting with like-minded people, attending your event, for example, where I can connect with myself and connect with people that are also interested in connecting with themselves or are on the same parts of, maybe I love personal development, for example. They're probably also on the same paths. Then we could have common interest and learn more from each other. Yeah.
Nice.
I really love that. Yeah. So I would just like to learn more from you. I know there's still a lot more to learn. I'd like to know what it means to be more human. What is something more human?
I'll let you take
Good question. We were workshopping names at a coffee shop called Metropolis in Denver, like right when we moved or a little bit after we moved. And we had so many different names and there were so many different variations. And I think that as the pendulum swings and we get really far towards like, AI and just, I think in my opinion, I think the pendulum has swung really, really far in that direction. And I feel like that's sort of why we created the Return to Real Life event. But I think something more human is really a return to human connection. I think that's what it is to me. I think that something like what is more human, I think, more human is in-person connections. More human is off your phone and eye to eye in real life. More human is mindfulness. More human is love. And I feel like we've gotten kind of far away from that. And I think people feel that. And I think even though that we seem to be more connected, than ever with these, we're also more isolated than ever, more depressed than ever. Suicide rate is up. And I think that we need to come back. We need to come back to the basics of humanity. And I think that's kind of how the name was born. And yeah, that's what it means to me. It might mean something different to you though.
No, you hit the nail on the head. Mic drop. No.
Yeah. I mean, for us as human beings, we are social beings. So I believe I also agree with you totally. Like social beings, we need to connect with each other, connect with ourselves also. And that's human. I mean, something more human is about having that deeper connection with each other, having that, intentional relationship with each other, not just superficial and say, hey, hello, what's the weather like today? But, going deeper, getting to know each other better, learning from each other. Yeah, that's very deep. Yeah. So for people out there who always like to work with you, maybe connect with you, get to know you better also, what's the best way to connect with you and maybe ask more questions that we could not cover?
Yeah, you can interact with us on Instagram. You can slide into our DMs. We'll always respond. You can listen to the show on any of your favorite platforms, and you can watch it on YouTube. We also have a private community called the Something More Society. So that is a paid community where we collaborate with one another. You can talk with Elliot and I, but you can also talk with other people inside the community. What else?
You can, and yeah, if you want to send, an email and there's some sort of collaboration that you'd like to do with the event, or you want to be on the podcast, or you just want to meet up, you're in Denver, you want to hang out, you can always email us as well. And that's community@somethingmorehuman.co.com. But there's many ways. Yeah. I mean, I think it seems like the easiest way for everybody is Instagram, and we're super active on Instagram. So if you DM us, we will absolutely respond probably in 24 hours or less. And yeah, we want to be as approachable as possible. We're just regular people with a passion for people. And there's so many ways to connect. But yeah, listen to our podcast. We'd love that. Follow it. Follow us on Instagram. Interact with us on Instagram. And if you're in Denver, we'd love to hang out. We'd love to grab coffee. I mean, we're all about that.
That's awesome. We'll place the link to your website in the show notes of this episode. The link to your Instagram and other platforms are also available there. And I also believe that on your Instagram page, because I was on it some minutes ago, there's a Linktree link, and there you have all the links to everything like that you do also. So I encourage people out there who are more interested in this to click on that Linktree link and get the right information that they need to other resources that they want to get to.
Yeah, thanks so much, Toby.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having you on the podcast. I've learned so much from you, and I'm blessed from this Soulful Conversation. Thank you so much.
Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought-provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.